Kyle, should we kick it off? All right.
Let's go.
Matt, I'm going to let you take it.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody. Today's webinar is part of our education series called You Asked, We Answer. And today we'll be discussing power features in Planview AdaptiveWork that you're probably not using or may not even be aware about. For our agenda today, we'll be talking about 5 features that you're currently not using or probably not using, but should because they add a lot of value to your Planview AdaptiveWork instance. Also talk about common rollout mistakes people make and to avoid those, right? So basically our goal is to make sure that Planview AdaptiveWork is successful for you. So we want to share some best practices and tips that we've learned over our term in business on what makes that successful. Next, we'll talk about reporting. Reporting is a pretty key feature that allows you to generate data for your executives or for status reports, things like that, to really save your time and make your life a little bit easier. Then lastly, Drew will take us through a demo of a dashboard. AdaptiveWork dashboard is pretty comprehensive and pretty sleek. So looking forward to that. A little bit about us. So my name is Matt Henderson. I'm a Kolme Group founding partner. I've been a PMO consultant most of my life. I did take a stint and ran a global PMO for a Fortune 500 company for a few years. So really understand the industry and kind of the business processes and problems that people have in running projects. Most of my project management time has been focused on customer-facing projects, so working with customers and selling services. So that adds another dynamic because you have things like revenue and cost and margin to worry about as well as your tasks and work management. I have a background in strategy. I also have my project management professional certification. I'm also security certified, which is interesting because a lot of people in project management don't have the security certification, but they actually marry pretty well because you think the triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability is as important in project management and project management tools as is security. Drew?
All right, and I'm Drew Middleton. I am one of Matt's partners at Kolme Group. We actually have similar backgrounds. In fact, we worked together many years before Kolme Group was even founded. So I've been in the role of a project manager, a portfolio manager, and a PMO leader, but I've been on both sides of the fence as a consultant and working internally within an organization running a PMO itself. So again, very similar backgrounds, got a couple of certifications too.
Great, thanks, Drew. So a little bit about us. So Kolme Group just turned 8. Happy birthday to us. So we've been established in 2017. We've actually been working in the project management tool space for a while. We've delivered over 1,700 projects to over 900 distinct customers. So we have a lot of experience across the board, not only on Planview AdaptiveWork, but other tools as well, which allows us to give really some of those best practices and tips about what works and what doesn't work. And we also work across industries, from marketing, automotive, to industry and fabrication, for example. So we have a lot of ideas of how companies can get value out of project management tools based on their different industry specialization or use cases. We are global. We have offices in the US and Spain. And what's different about us than other vendors that work in this space is that we come from a project management focus. So as you notice from Drew and I, we have a really strong project management background. So we hire people with project management type skill sets. We teach them technology. And this gives them a bit of a different perspective as they're working with you to understand, what your use case is, what your issues are, and how a tool can support you to make it better. We also have capabilities outside of project management. We have business analysis, change management, Scrum, ITIL. So kind of across the board that we can help customers in discussions around kind of the full stack around project management tools and how we can help you. So next slide, please, Drew. So today our objectives is to kind of explore those high impact, lesser known features to really help your business, right? So some of these things that we're talking about today are really impactful. And they're not necessarily maybe as complicated or daunting as they seem like, and Drew will kind of walk you through those. As I've mentioned, learned from real world examples, right? So of those 1,700 projects we've done, we've made mistakes. Our customers have made mistakes. We've learned from that and kind of have the best practices, tips, and tricks, so you don't make those mistakes going forward. And then also lastly, kind of discover how to scale insights and visibility through reporting, for example, without adding manual work, right? A tool is supposed to make your life easier. It's not supposed to add work to your plate. I know everybody has a busy day job and tasks they're responsible for. So we want to free up some time for you, right? And show you how to do that within AdaptiveWork. So Drew, I'll kick it over to you.
All right, so these are some of the features that we're going to take a quick look at in AdaptiveWork today. And before we do that, we want to start with a poll because we sort of have claimed that these are 5 underused features, and I believe they are based on our experience working with customers. But I'm curious about your experience. So I'm going to put the poll up. Oh, it looks like it's already up there. Hopefully you guys can see that. And we'll see, are you guys already using any of these? So we're talking about from left to right, sentiment analysis. You may not even have heard of that one. Placeholder groups and group job titles, versions and version snapshots, milestone templates. These are not project templates, but milestone templates. And RAID log. RAID stands for risks, action items, issues, and decisions. Some people use different words for those for that acronym, but those are the items we'll be talking about today. And wow, I'm impressed. I see that folks are actually using these. So you're stealing my thunder, but hopefully we'll share a little bit of insight into this. Let's see if I can share the results of the poll. So I need to share the results. Are you guys seeing that? I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it looks like a good portion of you are already using sentiment analysis. About half of you are using the job title capability within groups. Version snapshots, I see 80% there. That's fantastic. Milestone templates, a few less, about 70%. And RAID logs only 50. So I'm going to chastise you all on that. We're going to try to get you to start using your RAID logs because they are a fantastic tool.
It's Drew that's not using, so a lot of those people aren't using those products.
Oh, that's who's not using it. Okay. Oh, I read it completely backwards. All right. Thanks, Matt. All right, well, let's take a look then. So we're going to actually jump into an adaptive work instance. And the first thing we're going to look at is sentiment analysis, in case you're wondering what that is. The reason I picked that as an underused feature, AI is just a hot topic today, right? Everybody's doing artificial intelligence. They're doing large language models. ChatGPT is everywhere. So project managers are talking an awful lot about AI, but I don't know that a lot of them are using it yet. And it can be intimidating. It could be a little scary about, is this going to take away my job? No, it's probably not, but it's going to change your job for sure. But it's also intimidating in how do I get into this? How do I start using AI to make my job better? Well, the nice thing about Planview is they've taken a very proactive approach with this. You may have heard of their Copilot product, and we saw a demo of that just recently. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic AI tool. But that's a more full-fledged AI tool than sentiment analysis. Let me jump over and show you what we're talking about with sentiment analysis. So this is my sandbox. It's really not a demo instance. It's a sandbox. It's a mess, but it's going to work for this. And we can see that I'm on a portal page. Hopefully most of you are pretty familiar with this. If we go to our projects view in my sandbox, I've got a specific view that I've limited down to just active projects, and I've exposed a number of fields that you may not be familiar with. These are relatively new fields. So all the fields on the left side here, these are the fields related to sentiment analysis. What we're doing in adaptive work, they're using a large language model to analyze specific text fields. So this is not looking at your budget status. It's not looking at your schedule. Instead, it's looking at text that users have entered into the projects or programs. And it's then performing an analysis on that text to determine, is the general sentiment, is the general thought within the wording of those comments positive, negative, or neutral? And so that's what you can see here on some of my projects. I actually have some sentiment analysis already calculated, and on some I don't have any calculated yet. Where's it getting this? What text fields is populating this? Well, you have control over that. We can put up to 25 fields into the sentiment analysis engine, and so you tag those fields. And they can be standard fields, they can be custom fields. And there's a kind of a neat trick here. I'm going to jump over to the configuration. And if we go to all item types, now this right now is only working on work items, and more specifically, it's only enabled on programs and projects. But even from all item types, there's a little filter over here. So this is for the admins here who are used to seeing this. And we can see used for sentiment. If I check that, it's going to bring back a list of the fields. Well, it worked just before the demo. We'll give that a quick refresh. Oh, sorry, I jumped back down to versions. I thought it was on all item types. There we go. Now it's bringing back our list of fields. And we can see the fields that I have selected for sentiment analysis are all project or program fields, or in this case, work item fields, but it's really only going to read from the values in these fields that are on programs and projects. So I chose these fields. And the way that I chose those, I'll open one up. We're not going to go too deep on this. But we can see there's a pick list or a toggle field here now for used for sentiment. And that's going to be available to you on text fields, text area fields, rich text fields, and those special overview fields. If you're not familiar with the overview fields, come to one of our office hours and we'll teach you about those. So you can choose up to 25 fields. You can see that I've chosen 7. I didn't choose any of my custom fields. I went with all the out-of-the-box fields. But I said these are fields where project managers or project participants might be putting in comments that would have some kind of sentiment, might have some sort of an inclination to say this is going well or not going well. So if we jump back to the projects module, what we can see are a number of fields related to that analysis then. These are not the fields themselves, the text fields. These are the analysis fields. And let me explain what they are very quickly. The first one is your sentiment status. It's just a simple RAG status. We call that red, amber, green. And you can see that I've got some positive, some neutral, and some negative sentiment. What it's doing, the system is looking at the project, it's looking at those 7 fields and saying, based on the text I see in there, through the analysis that the large language model AI does, it's giving you a score. Now, the actual score can also be shown, and that's the sentiment score. And you can see that this project has a 3, that's a positive. This project has a -1, and these neutrals are all going to be 0. The higher the score, in theory, the better the sentiment. The more fields you put in, the higher the max score you could get. So I have 7 fields that I've enabled for this. So my max score would be a +7. My worst score would be a -7. If the AI looked at all 7 fields, found text in there that it said, wow, this really has negative connotations, I'd get a -7. So that's how the scoring is done. Now, the sentiment latest, you can see there's a check mark in almost all of these, but this one is missing that. And this is a clever feature. I'm really impressed that Planview put this in. It lets you quickly look to see, has somebody added data, added text in one of these sentiment fields that hasn't yet been calculated, because we have to tell the system to do the calculation. It's not going to do this on its own. So we can see that all my projects are up to date except this one. Somebody's added some text data in a sentiment field, and we haven't yet calculated our new sentiment based on that updated text data. So we're going to do that right now. And we can also see when it was last calculated. That's our date, and when that sentiment changed. And we can see that based on the fact that there's new data, it's assuming the sentiment will have changed. So that's why today's date's there. So how do I get this thing to kick off? Well, that's one of the caveats we want to tell you about. It's not going to kick off automatically. You have to use some of the workflow in AdaptiveWork to get this to go. So most organizations, if they're going to use this, they're just going to build a rule, a simple scheduled workflow rule. Maybe they fire it every night, maybe they fire it every week, and they just say, go out, find my active projects and calculate the sentiment. I'm going to do it manually, so I built a custom action. You guys should all be familiar with this if you're already AdaptiveWork users, and if you're not, a custom action is just a way to manually call a workflow rule. So it's not a triggered workflow rule. It's not a scheduled workflow rule. It's a human activated workflow rule. So I'm going to go to my custom actions. I'm going to make sure that I have the right project selected. Now I can select multiple projects and run this custom action, so I might as well do a couple of them. And we can see that I've got a calculate sentiment action over here. It's a very simple custom action. All it does is one action, and it just goes and calculates. It doesn't take too long, it takes a couple of seconds. If you've got more fields, more projects, more text in those fields, it is going to take a little longer, because that AI has to go and basically read all of that, interpret whether it's connotating positive or negative. So I can see, please refresh my browser for each one of my projects. I got 4 responses. So as the message indicated, I don't see any change, but if I refresh my browser, we're now going to see that I have a change in the order here. Remember, we had a bunch of neutral items, but now my retool assembly line project has moved from a neutral to a +2, and that's because there's new sentiment in some of these text fields here. So that's how sentiment analysis works. It's a nice way to start dabbling in AI. You don't have to go too deep into it. You don't have to use the full Copilot product that Planview is rolling out, but this is available to you now. All you have to do is expose the fields, build a little either workflow rule or a custom action, and tag whichever text fields in your projects or programs that you want to be calculated or included in the sentiment calculation. Just to show you how this might work as well, I'm going to say here's a simple one just to test, and it shows that as actually a neutral, even though this is a positive 2 because I've got a bunch of other fields. If I change this to be negative, things are going horribly wrong, that's pretty negative. I think the AI is going to be able to pick that one up pretty easily. So when I refresh, we're going to immediately see, oh, I didn't even need to refresh. That check mark already went away. It said, hey, I see that somebody has added data to one of my sentiment fields on this project. We need to calculate sentiment again. When I do that, we can go to our custom actions, calculate sentiment. Shouldn't take too long, just one project this time. Came back very quickly. Please refresh to see that. Now remember, we're at a 2, positive 2. And if I refresh, I've now given it a negative comment in one of my 7 fields. I lose that 2 ranking, I go down to a 1. So it simply subtracted 1. I changed one field, put something negative in there, and a 2 goes to a 1. So it works. So I find that this is actually a really great way if we're in an organization who encourages their project managers and their end users to put a lot of text into things, to add a lot of commentary to their projects. This is a great way to sort of leverage AI to determine whether or not things are going well without having to go into all the risks and issues and whatever else you might have on your projects. All right, so that was sentiment analysis. Now we're going to look at placeholder group and job titles. Now this is something that has been in the product for a while. It's relatively new, but it's been there for, I think, a couple of years now. And this is fantastic functionality if you're an organization that is interested in resource management. So if you've got an organization where you have capacity issues, you've got bottlenecks, and you're not sure whether or not you can staff a project with people, the group job titles, I think, is the way to go. And this is what we recommend. Now, I'm not going to look at the job title resources themselves. I'm going to look at group job titles in my example here. And the way that this works, let's look at our groups first. I've got a capacity planning group here, group 1, and we can see that this group has 6 members. And I'm going to bring the job titles over here as well. I'm showing their job titles along with the members, and you'll see members that probably look somewhat familiar. They look like people to you. So Serena Test Case, Annie Architect, they both are architects. But then below that, we see something that's not an actual person. This is a group job title, and that's why I've exposed the item type column. What this does by adding this to the group, if we're using this as a resource planning group and we're using this with our capacity planning module, this allows a project manager to try to staff a project when they don't know the specific people, but they do know the type of roles. So if they say, you know what, I really need an architect on my project, and I know that I need it from this particular group, I'm going to put the architect job title onto my project. And then the resource manager can determine whether or not we've got the capacity to do that project in the time that you, as a project manager, are planning to do it. We did the same thing down here with project managers. We have 2 real project managers, and we have a job title, a group job title, representing that project managers. Now, why is this a departure from how we've done this in the past before this capability was around? Well, in the past, we would tell people just create a user with a user type of none, and that user could serve as a placeholder user. And the problem with that is it artificially inflates the capacity of the group. So if I had a real user record in here, even if it was a user type of none, and it said I'm a placeholder for the architects, it's going to think that there's actually 3 architects in the group. So when we go to capacity planning, instead of seeing just 2 people's capacity, it would show 3. That's where the group job titles comes in. This allows you to show the job titles without artificially increasing that capacity in the group. Let me show what that looks like actually in the capacity planning module. Now, before I do that, I'm going to show you a second group. How do we get those job titles in here? Well, here's a group that's got a couple of people. We'll bring our job title over here again. We've got Jennifer. She's not actually a primary resource in the group, so it's going to ignore her in capacity planning. And if you guys are using capacity planning now, you're already familiar with how that works. If you're not, again, I'll say, please come to our office hours. We'll happily show you how that works. But then I've got 2 people in my group, Timmy, technical architect, and I've got myself. I'm a project manager and Timmy is an architect, but we don't see those group job titles in here. Just adding people with job titles to a group does not bring the group job titles in. The way that we have to do that then is we can add group members. and we can find those job titles and bring them in that way. So you can do that. You can also do it from the job title side of this and bring groups in. So let's see, I'm just going to go down to, we're down here, we've got our project manager. And when I save that, now I've got the job title associated with the group. So it's a group job title. So when we go to capacity planning, I'm just going to refresh here. And what we can see in capacity planning is just what we want to see. The fact that I've got 4 people in this group and I've got 2 people in this group. If I were to click on my CP2 group, I can see that in any given week, we've got 80 hours. I know it's a bit of an eye chart here, but we've got 80 hours of total capacity. Drew's got 40 hours. Timmy's got 40 hours. Those job titles don't show up with capacity. We can see them. I can go to job titles here and I can see that we have architects and project managers. And I can see the capacity associated with them based on the people in the group. But when I look at resources, I just see the real people. I'm not seeing 120 or 160 hours a week artificial inflation of that group's capacity. And so then from a project, we'll just jump over here and I'm going to do this pretty quickly here. If we want, as a project manager, I can add a resource. So we'll go to our work plan and we can go to, let's see, I've probably hidden the resource column here. There it is. So maybe we want to add a job title here. So within the Add Resources panel, you can see that we can show many different things. And we now have assets. I'm not going to talk about those today. That's another functionality that you may want to consider using. We do have user placeholders, and that can be useful for something. But what I'm really focusing on right now are my group job titles. So when we look at that, we also can see that they are associated with the group. So here's my architect. And architect shows up 4 different times here because I've got architects in my system in 4 different groups. My CP1 group, CP2 group, those are the ones we've been working with. And I can choose whether I want an architect from one group or another. Save that. And of course, we could put a project assignment on there. Let's see, we can go to, I'm going to do this pretty quick just because for sake of time, we want to keep this moving along. So we'll go to our resource planning view. And so now that architect shows up as a resource, and I can say, well, great, maybe I need some time from that architect. And so I'm going to put in that I need 20 hours in July. There's not much July left. And maybe I need 100 hours in August. All right. So those project assignments are now in there. And of course, if we go to, where's our capacity planning module and refresh, we now can see, in fact, if we drill in, well, let's just go from here. We can see that we're now looking for resources here in our retool assembly line. And specifically, we're looking for an architect. And so then we can see the capacity available. So if we go here, because I chose the CP1 group and I put the architect in there, it's going to show up now because there is a request for that. But that job title itself doesn't have any capacity. So we can see what's requested and we can see it has no capacity. We're going to have to assign that to a human. But that allows a resource manager to see whether or not we actually have the capacity available based on the humans with that job title. All right. So that was the group job title functionality. I know I'm going pretty quickly here. We don't have a lot of time. So again, I'll offer anyone who wants to come to our office hours, we can go into more depth on any of these. Let's talk a little about versions and version snapshots. I don't think a lot of people are using these either. And I believe that the sort of the source for this functionality was the original baseline capability, which still exists in the product. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. When we go through our Project Management 101 training or our PMP training, we all know about baselining projects. The idea being that we want to see how a project evolves over time. And in adaptive work, the baseline functionality was good, but it wasn't great. And there was actually an app in the marketplace at one point to allow multiple baselines. So out of the box, you could do one baseline. And with that app from the marketplace, you could do up to 10, but it was really limited in what it captured. What versions and version snapshots capture is much more expansive because these capture not only the baseline information that you can get in your projects, but they also can capture time phase data. And so this is a big leap for the AdaptiveWork product. Now, these are, I think, a little confusing though. So let's take a look at a project and how these work. Why do we have two objects, versions and snapshots? Why not just one? And the way that we can look at it is that a version is really a container. So you've got your project itself, and then at certain increments throughout your project, you might want to take, we'll call it a baseline or call it a version. And that's going to be a container that's going to hold a number of snapshots depending on your project. So I'm going to switch back to a different view. We'll just go to a simple two-column view here. And in my work plan, you can see that I've got the project itself, I've got milestones, and then I've got tasks. The snapshots, when we take a version, the snapshots are taken on the project itself. So data from the project go into a snapshot, but they also take snapshots of each of the milestones. It doesn't go down to the task level, but it does take a snapshot of every milestone in your project. Now, the way that we can do this, we first have to enable. You can see that I've enabled over on our ribbon a versions tab. So when I'm highlighted on the project, the versions tab is there. We won't see that when we're on something else. So if I'm on a milestone, that tab goes away. It's only available on versions. Only available on projects. If I go there, what I can do is I can save a version, or I can ask to bring up the latest version. And that might be helpful. Typically, I like to expose panels, or even better, I like to use reporting for my versions. So let's save a version. In this particular project, we're retooling an assembly line. We've been through planning and design. We're just about done with that. We've started to work on installing the new assembly line. I skipped removing the old one because I thought that was boring. So let's save a version, and I'm going to label my version. And I happen to know as the project manager here that this is going to be my version 4. And we'll call this install new line. Now that's all I have to do. We could add fields here. So this is an add edit card just like any other. And sometimes it's nice to add a description field. So you might do that. I didn't bother here. All right, versions have been updated. Great, where do I see that? Well, in this particular view, I've exposed versions and snapshots. And we can see that I've now got 4 versions, and it thinks we've got 3 snapshots, but I'm going to refresh. It takes a little while for the snapshots to show up. There they are. Now I have 4 snapshots. And you might say, Drew, you're a liar because you told me that there would be snapshots for all of the milestones, and there are. So that's where this container concept comes into play. These snapshots that you see here are simply the snapshots of the project. But if I go into my new version, I'm going to open this over here. I'll see that I actually have 6 snapshots within that because that's where my milestone snapshots are held as well. And my financial planning milestone or financial planning data is in there as well. So I didn't have any financial data updates here, so it didn't do that in this particular one. But if I'd changed any non-labor resource data, for instance, we'd have a snapshot there. Now, the last thing I'll tell you about the snapshots, well, 2 more things really. First, there's not much of a property card in the versions. The snapshots is where the action is. So if we go into the snapshot itself, that's where you want to set up your property card because that's where all the data is stored. And don't forget that you've got snapshots on projects and you've got snapshots on milestones. So set up your property cards for both. And then the other trick here is that the real beauty of this is to use it with reporting. And there's actually a series of reports available in the marketplace for this. So if you go out to the app marketplace and if you just search for version or snapshot, you'll find the reporting package. And that comes with 4 reports. In fact, here, we'll just go jump into the reports module real quickly. So down here, we can see versions and snapshots. And I'm in a dashboard view, so we'll get rid of that. And here are the 4 reports that come right from the marketplace. So you're already off to the races as soon as you install these. So I highly recommend that. Now, one more piece of capability on versions and snapshots. As I showed, you can call them manually. So you can be in your project and say, yep, I'd like to grab a snapshot or a version, rather. But really, the functionality, I think, lends itself well to the workflow engine. This is the kind of thing where typically in a project, if you're going through a phase gate or a stage gate process, you'd probably want to grab a version at every change of the phase or stage. It seems like that would make sense. So just set up a workflow rule that does that. You are limited to 20 versions if you're on the old enterprise version of AdaptiveWork, or if you're on the unlimited version of AdaptiveWork. The name's a little bit of a misnomer because there are still limits, and you can get 50 versions. So I wouldn't recommend a scheduled workflow rule. I wouldn't say pull a version every week, because if your project runs for more than a year, you're going to start running out of versions on each project. And that's per project on those limits. All right, so that's just a very high level overview of versions and snapshots. Basically, I think of it as taking baselines and putting them on steroids. It gives you a lot more flexibility. You can choose which fields that you want to capture. So of your custom fields, at least, the standard fields are selected for you, but the custom fields, you can decide whether to pick them or not. All right, keeping an eye on the time, guys. We only have an hour. Milestone templates. I could go into this one for an hour on its own. I love milestone templates. Now, I think a lot of you are probably familiar with project templates. You start a new project, maybe you have a project intake process, and through the course of that, you may select at some point a template for your project so that when that project's created, you don't have to go and create the entire work breakdown structure or work plan. It comes from the template. But sometimes we get partway into a project and we say, you know, I really need a whole lot more in my work breakdown structure. So for instance, I'm jumping back to my project here. This is my retooling our assembly line project. And we've got a pretty good work breakdown structure, and we've got some milestones here already. And maybe this came in from a template, or maybe I built it myself. But I want to add a milestone, but I want all of the work plan for that milestone to already be built for me. Well, we can do that with milestone templates. And so when I say add a milestone here, sometimes if you say add milestone, you'll only see the name, and that's not going to give you the opportunity to select a template. That's why you may not even know this capability exists. So again, we're talking about the add edit form or the add edit page. This is all handled through profiles. So if we go into our profiles, I'm in my administrator profile. And so when I go to a milestone, if we go to our field layout, this is the add edit mode that we're talking about here. And that's where we have to expand this a little bit. So if you only have the name and you don't have anything else here, if you want to use templates for your milestones, be sure to add templates. Just drag it on over. You can put it above the fold or below the fold. So the fold is the more info separator. We could put it down here if we wanted. Oops, I didn't quite get it down. I don't have a section down there. So anyway, I'd have to add a section. But the other key is that we want to make sure that we're not doing name only in inline mode. Because if we do that, we're going to override this and not let the end user see anything except the name. So take that toggle off. That's going to allow you to see this add edit card, if you want to call it that. I cancel that since I've already got it. Okay, so back in my project, if I wanted to add a new milestone, I could put a name in, or I can just skip that and simply go to the template. And we can see that I've got a milestone template. I've got a number of them, but I've got one called cutover activities. That sounds like something I'm missing. Let's add that. And when I bring that in and save it, it gives it the name cutover activities. I could override that name, or I could just use the name that comes with it. And you can see it brings in its own work breakdown structure. So I've already got a bunch of tasks under that milestone. So it's a one-stop or a one-step shopping process for project managers to build a work breakdown structure very quickly if you've got repeatable milestones, if they're things that your organization does on a regular basis. Instead of trying to force an entire project template on a project, you might build it a la carte with milestone templates. All right.
So, Drew, we have a couple of questions here that I just saw come through the chat. The first one here, do you have to have AI enabled before being able to use sentiment analysis? How does that work there?
Nope, sentiment analysis is enabled out of the box. So that's available to you. Those fields should be available in your organization, and you should be able to add them to views, and then you should be able to tag your text fields for sentiment analysis. Remember, it's only on programs and projects. It's not on any other items just yet.
Perfect. I thought you said that, but I want to confirm since you're the expert. And then another question here around group titles. Is adding a group title to the selection menu the same as adding an individual new tab or entering other information?
So yeah, adding a group title, it really is using a job title. So there has to already be an existing job title. In my environment, I already had the architect job title, and we had a couple of people who had that title applied to them, and we already had the project manager title. And so then what you're really doing is just associating that job title, just as you would associate it with a user, you're associating it with a group to say that this group has architects or this group has project managers, and therefore we're going to allow project managers to select by job title rather than named user when we're putting resources on our project.
That's great. And again, you're the expert. Last one here, and then we'll let you continue on. Can you use snapshots to do a burn down analysis and forecasting that you just spoke through here on the versions?
Yeah, that's exactly what you could use snapshots for. So for instance, if you're looking at a budget burn down and you want to say, well, how is my budget being consumed during the course of my project? Well, if you take snapshots at somewhat regular intervals and the budget is being consumed during that, and as long as we've got those budget fields exposed in the snapshots, then the reporting is going to be able to show you a burn down of that. So yeah, it's a fantastic use case for snapshots.
And how hard is it to enable versions here in the environment? Is it pretty straightforward, out of the box?
Well, it's out of the box. There's always the ability to do configuration on it. So like I mentioned, you might want to do a workflow rule to have those snapshots triggered automatically based on some sort of conditions. But the important piece, let me go into profiles again. The important piece is that on your programs and projects, on your programs projects, we have to make sure that we've got related items. And that's where we're going to have our versions. So yeah, they're here somewhere. And in our actions, if we go to our ribbon, you can see that I've got this versions piece. So this is basically how that ribbon is built on a project. If the versions is off, so in my case, I've just moved it back over here. If we're not seeing it here, then you simply have to enable it. You just bring it over, and that's how you get your save version and your latest version in the ribbon. And that's per profile. So I'm working my administrator profile. Maybe not every profile should have the ability to do this, so maybe you don't want to enable those.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you so much here, Drew. And we'll let you continue on until we get some more questions.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about the last item. And this is the one where it looked like, since I read that poll incorrectly, most of you actually are using RAID log items, and that's fantastic. I want to talk about two in particular, though. We see a lot of folks managing projects, and they include risks and issues. So they're good. They're tracking their risks in a log. They've got their issues in a log. Fantastic. We don't see as many people using the action items and decisions. And these are, again, relatively new. I guess not anymore. I'm old school and from the old Claire's and days in adaptive work. But these particular record types, action items and decisions, are available now. Let me show how they work, because they are a little different. Let me go back over to my environment here. We'll go to our project. Now, again, these are enabled through profiles. You have to add them and make sure that they're add related or related items to your project, or they can be down on the work level, work item level. So it might be on milestones or tasks as well. So if we add related, and we can see here that we've got risks, that one is down at the bottom, while issues is up here at the top. But somewhere in the middle, I've got action items, and you'll see I've got two different kinds. I'll explain that in a second, and decisions. So these are, again, slightly new. They weren't originally part of the old Claire's product, but it really fleshes out that RAID log functionality for you. And you can add this just like any other item. The add edit mode or the add edit card can be edited. So if you want more fields here, if you want to say, well, here's the owner, but maybe I want the decision maker, or I have a due date, but maybe I need a custom field to say whether this decision has been made or is still pending. You could create that field and then add it here. So that might be something helpful. So we've decided to move forward with new conveyor belts for our assembly line project. So maybe we made that decision today, and we'll just add our action item, or our decision. And that's going to show up in the view depending on your view settings, of course. So when you edit your views, you want to make sure that you either have that panel showing up over here on our right-hand column, or it might be broad down here, or it might be minimized. So within this little section here where we have minimized panels. So you decide where that is, and then you can decide what actual fields you want to expose. So here we got the decisions, and we've got our decision on conveyor belts. Turns out we've got conflicting decisions on conveyor belts. We also have an action item here, very similar to decisions. All the same features apply, where you can modify that add edit card. You can put custom actions on these things. You can kind of do whatever you want with them. The reason that we're pushing this, though, is because it really is a best practice, and it's something that we find a lot of project managers slip on. We always see project managers doing a great job with their work breakdown structures. We see them doing a great job with dependencies and resource management. Maybe they're doing a good job budgeting, but for whatever reason, we often see the RAID log items sort of falling behind. And these are a fantastic way to make sure that you're tracking things on your project that are important, tracking things on a project that you don't want to have to relitigate or redecide in the future. Well, make sure those decisions are tracked, because people sometimes have, we'll call it spot amnesia when it comes to decisions that were made. Now, we often get the question on action items, how are they different than tasks? And the way that we at Kolme Group sort of define this, a task is something that has an impact on your schedule, or it may have an impact on your budget. It needs to be then in your work plan. Maybe it's on critical path, or maybe we have to make sure that resources are assigned and tracking time to that task because there's a cost component to it. Action items, on the other hand, I think of this as the to-do list. These are simple little things. It's a great way to remind ourselves. If I need to go down and just brief the VP on how the project's going, I don't necessarily need a task in the project schedule to track that. I just need to go down the hall and brief the VP. But if I don't put an action item in to say that I'm going to do it and to let me know that I did it, then later I either forgot it or the VP may forget that they got that brief. So,
on action items, Drew, over there, we have another question. Can you assign people other than the owner to action items, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, let's open an action item up. So like other objects in adaptive work, the action item has a set of out-of-the-box fields, and it has the ability for you to add custom fields to it. So you can see my action item, I don't really have anything exciting. I've got the last updated, the created by, and my property card isn't really fleshed out on this, but we know that we have an owner. So I can search for hidden fields. But do I have an assigned to? No. Well, maybe I want that. Well, let's do that then. So we go to the configuration, action items, and we create a new custom field. Hopefully you guys know how to do this, anyone who's already got adaptive work. So you're just going to create a reference to object field called assigned to. And it's that easy. Now you've got an assigned to field. Whoops, we got to select our entity type. That's what happens when I rush. We know this is going to be a person, so we'll select a user. Now it's that easy. So we'll give that a second to cook. And when we come back here, I'm going to just refresh. And now I can pick an assigned to person. So the out-of-the-box fields are somewhat limited. Feel free to create custom ones. I'm going to clear my filter here since they're not in sentiment. And we can see that you only get 17 out-of-the-box fields. That's not a huge number compared to some of the other objects in there. But you do get that custom field capability in the system. So put all the fields on these that you want.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. We do have one more question for you, Drew, before you kind of take us to the end here. And this is back to versions. Do you recommend versions more than using reforecast functionality for future forecasting of effort burn down? Like, what are your thoughts there, from a best practice standpoint?
That's a great question. And that's a question that I wish we had time to go into real depth on. In terms of my recommendation, it really is going to come down to your use case and what your business wants to see. You could use both. So the reforecast functionality, which you get to up through the work plan, that's a way to update fields in the project and calculate based on what's already happened in the project. So I would use that in conjunction with versions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's great. And we've addressed all the questions here in chat and on our Q&A piece. So we'll let you take us home.
Okay. So we wanted to show you guys a few things. We also wanted to save a little time to talk about what are some common challenges that we see when implementing adaptive work. It is a big, complex, highly capable system, and big, complex, capable systems come with challenges. It's not to say that it's not a good system. It's just that we have to be careful when we try to undertake a project of implementing these things. So I'll go pretty quickly through these. The first one, boil the ocean. I think that's probably pretty self-evident. But if we ever go into a customer, maybe they're a large enterprise customer, the very first customer I worked with, huge enterprise customer, they had 15 different PMOs, and they wanted to implement adaptive work for all 15 at once. And they wanted it to do everything for everybody. And that project was challenged because of the differences in the way that people approach project management across those PMOs. So don't boil the ocean. Keep it a little simpler. Start with a smaller group, or start with a limited functionality set. And then once you're comfortable with that, once people have adopted that, then start expanding. In a similar vein, overcomplicating simple processes. So there's a lot of stuff out of the box that works really, really well. And there's a mantra in software and software deployment that says, don't buy a piece of software that makes you change the way you do business. Buy a piece of software that does business the way you do business. Well, I like that mantra and I apply that mantra, but I apply it with a grain of salt. It's like the 80-20 rule. There's times when the out-of-the-box functionality is really good, and since we've got the product, maybe we want to try using that out-of-the-box functionality, because chances are it's been through a much more rigorous testing process than any configurations that you're going to build and try for yourself. Or it's going to minimize the overhead that your administrators have to manage. So that's our recommendation there, is don't necessarily change your processes radically to accommodate the system, but where it makes sense, consider using out of the box if you can, or just don't overcomplicate. Now, what I mentioned in there was adoption, and that goes into this next item of ignoring change management. We need our users to use the system, or it's not going to be successful. The best tool in the world is useless if it sits on the shelf. And so if we're trying to implement a tool like this and we don't think about the impacts of those of the change to people's work, to how they're going to do their job every day, then we're probably not going to get good adoption of the tool. People are going to resist it. So we strongly recommend that you consider scoping change management into your onboarding and make sure that communication and change management is prioritized. Command and control approach. I don't know if there's a better term for this, but this is something that we recommend avoiding as well. Unless you're in a highly, highly regulated industry, maybe you're in banking or healthcare, if you're not in one of those industries, you probably don't need as much command and control, as much governance as you might think you do, or as you might think you want. The way I look at this, project managers are very intelligent people. I'm one, and so I'm going to call us that. We're also creative, and we're hired for those skills and those capabilities. So if we put too much governance into our system, we're really sort of shackling our project managers and not letting them show their creativity, not letting them show the intelligence and skills that they have. So let them run a little wild. We don't want the Wild West. We want standardization, but we don't want governance to the point that it's so constraining they can't do the things that need to be done. All right, let's say you're implementing adaptive work, but you don't understand your current processes. Are you going to be successful? Probably not. I mean, this is really fundamental. And unfortunately, we see this a lot at Kolme Group. It's something that we try to advise our customers on. It's something that we try to really help them sort of steer their way out of this conundrum. If you don't know what it is you're trying to accomplish, if you don't know how your team likes to do their work, then whatever you implement, again, in the best tool in the world, it's not going to satisfy. So we really want to make sure that folks understand their core processes, understand what ancillary functions need from project management. Your finance team, your HR team, the resource managers in your organization, they have requirements too. They have things that they have to do, and they have bosses they have to report to. So if you don't understand their job, understand their role, then bring them in as a subject matter expert on the project so that we can all get a better understanding. This one, not getting admin training. So I mentioned that adaptive work is a big, complex system. It's a great system, but I use an analogy a lot here. You wouldn't put a brand new pilot who just learned to fly a single engine Cessna, you wouldn't throw them in the cockpit of a 737 and hope that they would be successful. So if you're using Microsoft Project today or Excel and you're thinking about putting in adaptive work, you're buying that 737. And that's fantastic. You're going to have a really, really fantastic tool here, but you need a pilot, and that pilot needs training. So get them the admin training. Don't skimp on that. And the final one here, not understanding your strategic objectives. So it's similar to not understanding your processes. Yeah, we need to know what those HR and those finance and those resource management people are doing, but we also have to know why. Why are they doing it? Why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money on a tool if we're not going to attain value from the tool? Then we've wasted our time and wasted our money. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that leadership, when they look at this 6 months, 12 months down the road and say, wow, I'm so glad that PMO leader, you talked me into getting adaptive work. I'm so glad that I have better visibility into my portfolio, into the health of it, into the risk sort of profile of my portfolio, if that's what they want, into the budget. So we have to understand all of that up front, because if we don't know that, we're not going to capture the right information. We're not going to present the right information. And that leads me into our next piece, how to improve your reporting and visibility without adding admin overhead. Before I go on, were there any questions on those last items? Are we good there?
I don't see anything here in the chats, and I think we are good to continue.
All right. So we've got our strategic objectives, and we know why we're implementing adaptive work. We know what leadership wants to see. We know what our stakeholders need to see in order to do their jobs. How do we get that information into their hands in a nice, compact, consumable manner without spending forever writing reports? So we're going to give you a couple of tips on that. The first tip is to delegate. Train your project managers, train the people who are using the system on how to write reports. If they have full user licenses in adaptive work, anybody can write reports. Now, we don't want our system cluttered up with global reports. And there's maybe every project manager has their own set of reports and everybody can see those. That's not great. So what we recommend here is that, yes, you train them on this, but you still restrict who can create global reports. Keep that to the admins. And then maybe every now and then, maybe every quarter, you could have a reporting focus group and sit down with those folks and say, who's written a really good report? Maybe that should become a global report. Who's struggling with reporting? So that's a way to help your admins get past that hurdle of constantly fielding requests for new reports. The next tip is to schedule your reports or use widgets. As much as I love Planview and I want to sell as many licenses for them as we can, I also love my customers, and I understand that we all have budget constraints. So scheduled reports and widgets are a great way to get information into the hands of people who need it without spending a lot of money. The scheduled reports, I love that every Monday morning I come into my home office and I look at my inbox and I've got reports in there from Adaptive Work, because I have scheduled reports that are sending those every Monday or whatever day you choose. And I don't have to log in to see them. They're sent right to my inbox and email, and I've got the report right there. I can log in, I can drill down, but I don't have to. And then widgets, if you're not using those today, widgets are fantastic. You can put them on projects or work items. You can put them on the capacity planning module, and you can put them on reports. And that allows, say, executives or anybody who doesn't have a license, it allows them to open that widget and see real-time information. They're not getting a PDF version of a report that was cut on Friday and then trouble happened over the weekend and they don't know about that. They're getting the real-time information because it's not just a PDF, it's actually a view into adaptive work. The third recommendation that we have for you, use Slide Publisher. If you're not using it already, start using it. And if you are using it, make sure that, we'll go back to tip 1, that people know how to work with Slide Publisher. Because a lot of times what we see at Kolme Group, we'll implement Slide Publisher for a customer, we'll stand them up with one project status report, and then we find months, years later, they maybe haven't added any additional Slide Publisher templates. So that's a great way to save time and boost productivity for your users, Slide Publisher, for those who don't know, takes data out of AdaptiveWork with a couple of clicks and generates a PowerPoint presentation deck. So all you have to do is create templates, and then your project managers, your executives, your resource managers, whoever, can create their decks with just a couple of clicks. You save a tremendous amount of overhead by templatizing those types of things. And of course, we're going to bring this back around to AI. Our fourth tip for saving yourself some overhead is leverage Copilot. Now, this is coming. It's not really ready for prime time yet when it comes to reporting, but we did just recently at Kolme Group, we met with Planview. We saw a fantastic demo and talked to them about the roadmap on Copilot. This tool is going to be fantastic. So right now, it's already doing some really good things on projects and programs. In the future, reports are going to be added, so it may be able to write reports for you or generate reports. So definitely start leveraging that. Don't be afraid of AI. There's all sorts of information out there on how to generate prompts and engineer those prompts. So definitely you can talk to us at Kolme Group. You can talk to Planview if you don't already have Copilot enabled, but they just do a quick security evaluation with you, and then you can get Copilot enabled in your production instance. So take advantage of that. All right, very quickly, we have almost no time left. I know we said we were going to show you a dashboard. I'm just going to show you real quickly what dashboards look like if you're not familiar with them. I'm going to jump into a different environment now because mine is such a mess, and we're going to go to reports. I've got a view in the reports module that filters down to just dashboards. And so I'm clearing the clutter. I have a whole bunch of reports behind this, but if we just want to see a dashboard, we pull up dashboard 1. This is sort of the out of the box, the old school dashboard. What I wanted to show here is a mistake you can make. In this case, I've got a 3-column dashboard, and I can see some nice stuff in the skinny column on the left. I got some nice stuff in the broader column in the middle, and I have some stuff that I have no idea what I'm looking at over on the column on the right because I ran out of room. I can float over this, but that's not a great deliverable for your executives to make them float over something. So what I would recommend is that if you do build dashboards, consider not just doing a 3-column view with the broad column in the middle. Consider doing different column views depending on what information you're trying to present. So I'm going to go back to my list and I'll show you dashboard 2. This is a different dashboard. And this dashboard shows similar information, but in a different format. And you can see it's a 2-column, so we get a little bit more room in this particular panel here. For instance, we're actually showing a grid rather than a chart. And so we needed a little more real estate to show that data. In this particular panel, we're showing the highlights. All right, I know we're just about out of time. I appreciate you all sticking with us. If there's any additional questions, please let us know. We did talk about our office hours. I think Kyle's going to tell us a little bit about that in a second. So why don't we just go to, one last word of wisdom. You're not alone. Right? I love this quote. This is Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But remember, folks, we're a community. We all use this product. We love this product, and we can all learn from each other. Right.
Yeah. And on that note here, Drew, what you've talked us through here, we know that it could be complex. You're not alone. And so every Wednesday, we have a weekly office hours. I believe it's at noon Pacific Standard. Those are on our website. I did drop a link here so folks could see ones we have upcoming and future ones as well. And then also just upcoming events here that we have scheduled over the next couple of months is Project Management Tool Demo Day, where we actually touch on our favorite products that we use and that we work with here on a day-to-day basis. And we have our team of experts and consultants that live in these solutions and really just kind of talk through what they like about them and why their customers are getting success. And so here on August 12th, we have a 1-hour-long session here going over all of these different products. And then Drew, you want to take the one we have coming up in here in September?
Yeah, so building high trust teams. Now, I've talked about RaidLog a lot during today's conversation, and we're going to talk about it even more. So this is a RaidLog focused webinar, and we're going to show you how RaidLogs can really be a true project enhancement tool. Something that I think a lot of project managers are underutilizing at this point.
Awesome. Well, we went 2 minutes over like all good meetings do. So thank you everyone here for registered and attended it today. We'll send some follow-up information as well. And you'll have a good rest of your work week, okay?
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.